Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this Medicine for Members event. And I hope you're all comfortable, and I hope you're going to have an entertaining, interesting, and enjoyable evening. My name is David Myers. I'm what they're called an elected patient governor, serving my second term here. So people like your good selves have, for some odd reason, voted for me to be a governor, and so I represent patient interests. And I have particular interests on the renal side, but I also play a part in a number of board committees where, again, I look after patients' interests, and in particular, what governors in the hospital have to do is hold to account the non-executive directors, who in turn hold the board to account. And what I would normally be saying at an event like this is it's also an opportunity for you to meet governors. On this occasion, you're only going to meet one because I don't think we have any other governors in the audience. But if you do, at the end, have any issues that you want to talk to me about, please do so. On these occasions, these particular events are organised by the Council of Governors in association with the membership group, of which Henry, who's been walking around here. Where are you, Henry? Henry Tollett? There's Henry waving to you. He's from the membership group. So just for some comfort announcements, if any of you need to use the toilets, we do have toilets here by the side. You will have noticed on the way in that two of our main toilets are being rebuilt. No doubt in typical world-class Royal Free standards, they're going to be of the highest possible standard. And I think that when eventually they're finished, people will have a great pleasure in relieving themselves in those new toilets. So anyway, tonight's event is all about volunteers, and this is quite an operation here in the Royal Free. It's quite astonishing that, as Richard Scarth will be talking to you about in a minute, that we have between the Royal Free Hospital and Barnet Hospital approximately 600 people that play a part as volunteers. If any of you have been an inpatient in the hospital, you will of course been aware of some of the services, but I think what you're going to find out tonight is the depth and breadth of the services that are available here. And on behalf of the Royal Free, we are very proud of our team of volunteers and the work that they do. I myself, although I'm not part of the volunteer bit, I also am of course a volunteer and have been doing my bit for patients for about 18 years now. So, you know, I know what goes into playing a part and trying to use the individual expertise that any of us have. And I'm sure at the end of this you'll know how much we all value and appreciate the work that the volunteers do. So to tonight's proceedings, I'm going to be handing over Master of Ceremonies to Richard Scarth, who is the Director of Operations. And what he's going to be talking to you about is the depth and breadth of the programme that he's responsible for. And you're also going to be able to meet our young volunteers, and they're going to explain to you the parts they play in their programme. Gillian Hyatt is a volunteer and will be telling you her story. We have a dementia companion, Paul Reynolds, who's going to be talking to you. We have an interesting volunteer film. Jenny Todd will be talking about future plans for Royal Free volunteers. And at the end of that, we'll be taking questions and answers. So I'll be coming back to look after proceedings at that stage. So let me now introduce you to Richard Scarth. Richard.
Thank you, David. So thank you, David, and on behalf of myself the volunteers that are here present this evening. A very warm welcome to tonight's talk, to all the members, visitors and guests. I'm Richard Scarth and I'm the Director of Operations for the Royal Free Charity. And I'm very fortunate in that as part of my role, I'm responsible for the fabulous teams that look after the equally fabulous volunteers that support not just this hospital, but also Barnet Hospital, Chase Farm Hospital, and a number of smaller sites throughout North London. So we have a great presence and we're going to talk to you a little bit about some of that presence. This evening is very much about our volunteers. We've got some very interesting speakers for you, a short film for you to enjoy as well. We're going to share a little bit about the volunteers, about their very, very proud history. We'll talk about some of the different roles that they undertake currently, some of the different roles that we would like some of our volunteers to undertake in the future. And importantly, I'd like you to get a flavour of just what an impact our volunteers have on patients at the Trust throughout the different sites, visitors to the Trust, and importantly, the teams that work within the Trust as well. I'd like first of all today to start with a very quick thank you, and that's to thank some of the volunteers and team that you're going to hear from this evening. But I'd also very much like to thank those volunteers that have given up their time this evening to man some of our showcase tables. Hopefully many of you will have had an opportunity already to engage with some of our volunteers and see what is a very small sample of what our volunteers do every day. If you haven't done, there is an opportunity after our Q&A to spend some time with some of those people this evening. So please do take advantage of that while they're here. So that's me. Just in terms of volunteering generally, there are a truly staggering number of people that volunteer throughout the UK every year. Some statistics that I was reading recently said that about 10 million people volunteer in some way, shape or form on a monthly basis. Some of those volunteers are quite easily recognisable. And these for me are images that I think are quite powerful, ones that we would all recognise: the green of the Samaritans, Oxfam as charity shops. The lady on the right is from a cathedral that has a network of 1,000 volunteers that meet and greet and support visitors every day. And then the RNLI at the bottom, people who quite rightly receive some quite significant recognition for the work that they do. And are incredible volunteers themselves. Very powerful images, but I will maintain that our volunteers are equally as important and do as much, if not more in some cases. And we have one of our own images, which for me is as powerful. This is a photograph taken a few months ago, one of our volunteers with a patient at this hospital site. And for me, this encapsulates some of what volunteering within the Trust is all about. So hopefully you'll agree that that's quite a powerful image. But you'll be pleased to know that this evening isn't about listening to me. We are going to hear from some of the people that really matter. And this, as David's already mentioned, a very quick outline. Jill, who is the volunteer team manager at this site, is going to share with us a volunteer story. Paul, as David mentions, will share his experience about being a dementia companion within the Trust. We've got a short film to show you. Jenny, who's our head of volunteering, will then talk a little bit about what the future might hold. And we as a charity have a very clearly defined 5-year strategy as to how we want to work in partnership with the wider Trust to benefit those patients, visitors and staff. But before we do that, I want to put into context some of what we do already, and I've put together some numbers, and I want to have a little bit of a very, very brief quiz. These are some of those numbers. Anybody able to give me a correct answer will win a point, and points do mean prizes. If I can ask one of my young volunteers to join me for a second. So those are all statistics that are relevant to volunteering throughout the Trust today. And I'll open it up to you for any show of a hand as to who wants to hazard a guess as to what one of those might mean. Lady in the middle.
I think 600 is the amount of volunteers.
Absolutely. So first correct answer, 600, as David already mentioned, in very round numbers, is the number of volunteers that we have in the Trust today. And they're engaged in a multitude of different and fascinating roles. It might be somebody volunteering as a play volunteer in one of the children's wards. It might be a person volunteering to make nutritious cocktails for patients that are spending time on an oncology ward. It might be one of our volunteers who interact and engage with patients by providing books and conversation through our library service and our trolley services. It might be a mealtime assistant, a dementia or a ward companion. It might be somebody that's there for hairdressing or providing a barber service. It might just be somebody who's able and is in a good position to have what I describe as the longer conversation, the conversation that one of the very hard-working healthcare assistants or nurses within the Trust just doesn't quite have time to have. And we, through those 600 hours, we provide, in round numbers, 600 volunteers rather, we provide in round numbers about 40,000 volunteer hours throughout the different hospital sites within the Trust. So well done, young lady in the middle. Anybody else? Stephen?
30,000, is that for complimentary?
Yeah, spot on. A generous helping of chocolates for Stephen at the back. We have an incredible complementary therapy team, and one of our colleagues is at the back of the room today. Some of you have had the opportunity to experience a quick neck or head massage. We delivered actually 33,000 in the last year individual massage therapies to patients, and these are to patients that are in need of touch. It might be a patient who is possibly for the first time getting ready to have some surgery. We have massage therapists that come in at 5 in the morning and before to be there to spend time and touch the patients that are getting ready for some quite serious surgeries and to ease some of those anxieties. And I can't think of a much more valuable service. So yes, absolutely, well done, Stephen. Anybody else want to throw something out there?
46 years, 6 months, 21. Average age of volunteers.
It's a very good answer. Close but no cigar. The average age is probably not far off that. It might be a fraction on the lower side given the number of younger volunteers that we have, but we have volunteers who range in age from 16 right through to the very late 90s. So it's not right. I'm going to open that up to anybody else, and that includes my learned friends from the Barnet area and Enfield. 46 years, 6 months and 21 days.
The length of time someone's volunteered.
Nearly, but not quite. It relates actually to a specific service that we provide, and we've got some representatives.
Longest amount of time any patient is on the waiting list.
Again, very, very good, but no. Anybody else? Gentlemen?
It's the amount of time that Radio Enfield has been broadcast.
Absolutely. So chocolates for the gentlemen in the purple t-shirts. Radio Enfield has been broadcasting now for 46 years, 6 months and 21 days, which is truly incredible. Anybody else? Some tricky ones, so I won't dwell on this too much, but anybody else want to hazard a guess at either 1985, 32 brackets 8, 2,800 or 220?
1985 was when you started having volunteers.
Yes and no, but specifically there's a lady behind you who started in 1985. Eva behind you, who very recently was part of the Pride of Britain process and reached the very latter stages and volunteered here from 1985 and continues to volunteer today, which I think also warrants a quick round of applause. Anybody else before I fill in the blanks?
30,000 is a large donation somebody gave.
It's not. We are very fortunate to receive some fantastic donations that fund a lot of what we do. But if I can run through, I think what's remaining, 220 at the bottom, that's the number of volunteers who this year have received bespoke training in how to interact with a patient living with dementia. So it's training that we as a charity have provided to volunteers throughout this year. And it's incredibly valuable for those people that are spending time on the wards. 2,800 are the number of patient packs that we have put together and provided to patients in the accident and emergency departments. So somebody that comes in, as one would expect, an unexpected arrival into hospital, we provide packs with some basic toiletries and something for those people. And we in the last year have provided 2,800 of those. 32 brackets 8 is probably the most difficult one on the board. 32 is the number of individual paws that have walked through the wards and belong to 8 pets as therapy dogs that provide an incredible service to patients throughout this site and others too. And we have one of our pets as therapy here today somewhere. So if you have a chance, do say hi over there as well. So hopefully that just puts into context a very small sample of just what we do. And we'll hear through some of the other guys a little bit more as we go through. But before we move on to Jill, and without further ado, I'd like to hand over to some of our younger volunteers that are going to tell you their story.
Hi everyone, my name is Melina Pelling and I'm 19 years old. I started volunteering here at the Royal Free since last September, and I initially started because I hope to get into medical school and eventually become a doctor. But soon after that, it became much more than that. It wasn't just about getting experience to get into university. It was more about directly helping patients in the hospital, housekeepers in the hospital, on the wards, and stuff like that. I've helped charity before. I've donated money, done cake sales and stuff that people generally do at schools. But before this, I'd never physically made a difference myself. And I think that going out there, putting yourself out there and helping people and seeing the difference is much more rewarding to both ends of like the patient and the people volunteering. At the moment, and for the past year, I've done lots of different roles. Mainly, I'm on the wards. I've done the shop trolley, and occasionally I've done the sat nav as well. But I have to say, one of my favorite tasks to do is the teas and coffees, because although I don't get to spend that much time with one of the patients, like having lots of conversations with them, you get to see all the patients and you get to have a small conversation with every single patient on the ward, which I think is really important. My plans for the future of my volunteering, I plan to start volunteering in A&E and hopefully write a role description for other young volunteers who hope to start volunteering in A&E. Obviously, it's a chaotic place to be anyway, and sometimes it can be really daunting for volunteers down there because there's so much going on. There's not necessarily like one thing that you just stick to doing. So I'm going to go down there, kind of try and sort it out and write a role description for other volunteers. Through my volunteering, I've gained invaluable communication skills, and I've had so many amazing opportunities such as this. My confidence has grown immensely. I probably would not have been able to talk today in front of this many people if I had not started volunteering here. The first time I spoke in front of a significant amount of people was with the volunteering. It was in February. Me and some other volunteers did a presentation at Portcullis House, and we spoke about our experiences, mainly with dementia, but also generally our experiences volunteering. We got to meet Tulip Sadiq, and I got to meet lots of other volunteers, which I think is really important, to meet other people who care about the same things as I do, like care about things going on in the hospital, volunteering. And that's what I think is special about the Young Volunteering Programme. There's so many people coming in and out, and you just like meeting them. There are things like we had a Christmas dinner, so you get to meet other people who share the same interests as you. Another opportunity I had was recently I was nominated to be the I Will ambassador for one of the ambassadors representing the Royal Free. So it's a campaign to increase, the aim is to increase young people volunteering. I think it's by 40% by 2020, but I might be wrong, I don't know. So I'm representing the Royal Free in doing that. There was an I Will week where we did various things. We did a food bank collection. I did a dementia session with the Royal Free School, and we did a kind of Barnet opening at their dementia cafe in Barnet Hospital. As an I Will, so the I Will ambassador, it lasts for a year. So I have plans I recently did dementia champion training. So I plan to train 100 dementia friends as my time as an ambassador, which just means giving a 1-hour session, basically raising awareness about dementia and letting people know how to recognize it and how to help either in public or where they work, in their office, all kinds of stuff like that. In the volunteering program, I'm happy to say we currently have 100 young volunteers, and it's a very diverse group. Everyone has so many different interests. It's not just medicine. There's so many different interests, so many different goals with people in this volunteering program. And we live locally to the Royal Free, which is a bonus. Thank you for listening to what I had to say. Now I'm going to introduce you to some other volunteers: Farhana, Alice, Anthony, Alex, and Mabeen.
My name's Farhana, and I became a volunteer here because I wanted a better insight of how things worked in a hospital environment, because I haven't done volunteering before, so I wasn't sure how to interact with doctors and patients and just the general kind of outskirt of the hospital. So as I spoke with other volunteers and I got partnered with other people, I was able to kind of grow my confidence and talk to patients more confidently and not be as intimidated to serve tea as I thought I would. So that has definitely helped me here in this position. And I've been wanting to do an apprenticeship in health, which is going to be a different story for me. So volunteering has definitely grown my confidence to work with doctors and nurses, and has genuinely made an impact on me and as an individual to go out there more and be able to speak to everyone now. I think as the person I am, I'm more of an active role than to just sit in an office and do typing, because I like to do more rewarding things, like help others, just genuinely be there for someone that hasn't asked for it. And I hope to continue my placement here. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Alice. I'm 18. I'm on my gap year at the moment. I'm working in a bookshop and at a restaurant, and next year I'm going to go and study English university. I started volunteering because every time I'd ever been in a hospital, I always felt really comforted by the staff, and I wanted to see what it was like to work in that kind of environment and to try and help out even a little bit. And what's really surprised me about volunteering is actually how grateful some of the patients are for even the tiny things that we do, like bring them tea and coffee, and how loving they can be as well. So there have been loads of interactions I've had with people that I will actually probably never forget because of the warmth that they've had. Things like sharing family photographs and just holding someone's hand while you're saying goodbye. And it's not always like that. Sometimes people can be disinterested in you or a little bit rude maybe. But I think being in this environment, it really reminds you to be kind to everybody because vulnerability is so highlighted. And so even if somebody isn't kind to you, they might have their reasons for that. It just reminds you to be lovely to everybody as much as you can. And I'm just so grateful to have been able to work with so many amazing staff and meet so many amazing people and learn so much from them. Thank you.
Good evening all. My name's Anthony, I'm 18, currently studying A-levels at Mayhill County. I signed up to be a volunteer for the Royal Free a year ago after hearing about their good work from a classmate. I have aspirations to be a physiotherapist, so I was eager to experience a hospital environment. When I first started my A-levels, I found that I had a lot of free time during the week, so I was looking for something to sort of fill my time. Becoming a volunteer extended my knowledge on how a hospital works, and it provided me with the rare opportunity to interact with patients on a weekly basis. Many patients appreciated the fact that my fellow volunteers and I would spend our Friday evenings keeping them company and aiding nurses. I would come on Friday evenings in a group, which actually made it a lot easier. It helped us to be a lot more relaxed on the wards and interact with patients as well. I have a lot of good memories on the wards with patients. One in particular, one afternoon on the ward, I went around offering music from our famous jukebox, which is at the back there. It's a portable CD player. Although many patients do prefer a quiet environment at the time, there was one elderly patient who was particularly eager to listen to music. So at her request, we played a CD titled Hits from the 60s. We were shocked to find that she was able to recite every single lyric, word for word, and she was thrilled by the memories which the songs evoked. This made us realize that the small things that we do can actually make someone's day, and seeing her joy actually reminded us why it's so good to volunteer and help out the patients in the ward. Reflecting on my time here at the Royal Free, I now appreciate that the little things we do can have such a large effect. So even though we may feel as if we're not doing as much, the patients do let us know that it does help. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Alex, and I'm a dementia companion for Treat Clinic, which is an assessment team for elderly. It's located in the emergency department. Does any of you know what dementia is? Good to know. Never mind, I will tell you a bit about it through my own perspective and my own experience as a volunteer. So, I won't use usual definitions like disease or reasoning disorder or anything like it. Volunteering is a journey as well as give and take situation. You give your time and effort in exchange for something much more priceless, most priceless experience in your life. I went to Dementia training, which allowed me to learn the underlying knowledge about the disease. The training was very useful, but human beings are not a textbook, so you get the tools, but you need to learn how to apply them yourself. Throughout my experience, I learned that patience, understanding, and calm attitude is very important when dealing with dementia patients. These are just few things, but I learned quite a lot, so it would be hard to summarize all of them. My experiences ranged from strange to wonderful. One of the quite strange experiences was when one of the patients mistook me for her granddaughter, and I kind of had to play along with it. One wonderful experience would be when one of the carers gave me a hug for just having a conversation with her, because she usually doesn't get the time to, because of her duties and responsibilities. Going to my give and take point you give as little as simple conversation and companionship in exchange for something much more priceless as thank you or a smile. And also I got back from it a little bit because I knew when I joined Royal Free it would inspire my own university project. So if you decide to take on volunteering, I would hope that you might find some inspiration on the way. Furthermore, there's been studies that proven, such as Wilson 2000, that there are many benefits to volunteering, and one strange one is that it can increase your life. Due to that, it increases your happiness, and happiness is good for you. Lastly, I would like to thank you, Desiree, all the volunteers, the whole voluntary department, and the treat clinic for being so welcoming and making all this experience so great.
Hi, my name's Mabeen and I'm 17 years old. My journey of becoming a volunteer started just over a year ago when I started my A-levels. At the time, I had a rough idea that I wanted to go and do medicine. I really enjoyed the technical side of it, but I really didn't know whether I would be able to cope emotionally with the traumatic side of it. I realized the only way that I could be sure that this was the right course for me was to go out and experience it firsthand. Volunteering improved my understanding and awareness of what it takes to work in the medical profession. When I was helping out on the renal and dialysis ward over the summer at mealtimes, I learned how to adapt to unpredictable situations. Listening to the different accounts of patients, I was able to empathize with their situation. At some stages, I was affected very emotionally, especially because my grandmother was in a similar position. But going through these difficult situations and having the chance to reflect on them and has now meant that I've improved on how to communicate with people and respond in a calm and reassuring manner in stressful situations. Through volunteering, I've seen how lucky we are to have a good healthcare system in the UK compared to some parts of the world. My grandma had her dialysis carried out in a third world country, and unfortunately, due to poor infection control, she was infected with hepatitis C through a dialysis machine, and later she sadly passed away. Although hospital services are overly stretched in this country, volunteers with charities like the Royal Free can relieve some of this pressure off our hospitals. For example, at mealtimes, when there are 2 to 3 nurses serving food, it takes them about half an hour to serve all the food. With volunteers helping, this usually takes half the time. This leaves more time for nurses to focus on other things. And small touches like this can really make a huge difference.
Thank you again, all of you. Certainly, I struggle to speak as competently and confidently as those guys as a big and ugly 33-year-old. So thank you again, and I think another round of applause is well deserved. And you're very kind not to laugh, but that is actually 43 rather than 33. Thank you. So now I'll hand over to Jill, who's going to very briefly talk us through another volunteer story. Jill.
Okay, I'm Jill. I'm the volunteer team manager at the Royal Free, and I've had the privilege to work with some exceptional volunteers during my time here. I want to tell you the story of Justine. In her words, she is unable to be with us tonight because she has very complicated home commitments. My name is Justine Tusabi, and I have a 17-year-old son called Christian with profound disabilities and health problems. I am my son's full-time carer and therefore cannot work. But 2 mornings a week, I volunteer at the Royal Free, my local hospital. In 1999, I came to the United Kingdom from Uganda, seeking asylum alone and 29 years old. In those days, asylum seekers were not allowed to work until a decision was made on their case. Shortly after I arrived, I found out I was pregnant, and a few months later, I gave birth to Christian, who was constantly in several hospitals for the first 2 years of his life. The last 11 months, he was in the Royal Free, and even when he was discharged, he continued to be admitted to the hospital. To cut this very long story short, during our extended frequent stays in the Royal Free, there were volunteers in the ward's playroom who always helped me to entertain my son when I got some rest in the corner of the room. If he was too unwell to come out of bed, they would bring him toys and sit with him for a few minutes trying to cheer him up. They made such a big difference to me because where I come from, I'd never seen anything like this before. When my son started school, I found myself with a few hours in the day, and I thought I would try and give back to the hospital that was there for us. In 2004, I started to volunteer, and now I volunteer for 2 mornings a week. When I come to the hospital, I do anything that needs doing, like taking the shop trolley to the wards to patients that can't leave their beds. But my main role is to help out on the wards. I make tea for the patients, prepare food trays, take lunch orders, sit and chat with lonely patients, and help serve refreshments. Many people ask me why I do it, but coming to the hospital and helping a patient with a cup of tea or relieving a member of staff on a busy day when they may not have time for a break helps me to get out of my situation, and when I get home, I actually feel refreshed. Everybody wants to do something other than look after their children, especially if you are young and able. But unfortunately for me, caring for my son takes a lot of my time and all of my energy, and I'm not able to take on a permanent job. But that doesn't stop me from wanting to do something else than caring for my son. Volunteering at the hospital helps me give back to my community and say thank you to the place that always takes care of Christian when he's not well, and helps me feel like I'm doing something other than being a carer and that I'm contributing and saying thank you to society. It's Justin.
Thank you, Jill. Can we just dim the lights slightly? So we're now going to move on to playing a very short film that we put together a few months ago, which we did for one of our volunteer parties, which is an occasion where we recognise and thank some of our volunteers. It's about 5 or 6 minutes long, and I think it, again, gives a really nice flavour of what volunteering within this trust is all about.
Hi, I'm Keith, and I have to admit I'm a bit of a hippie. I joined the Royal Free as an admin clerk in 1966 because I was allowed to wear my hair long. And 50 years later, I still have never had a day sick, and I've never managed to leave here. I've done lots of jobs here, but after retraining as a masseur in 1991, I set up a massage service, which is a complementary therapy. It was an instant success, but when I got to 2,000 massages a year, the hospital and consultants realised how essential their therapy is. That's when I started the complementary therapy service and team leader for the voluntary massage therapists. What a success it's been. This last year we delivered 33,000 massages. That's terminally ill and frightened patients given a real respite from the suffering at a time when they really need it. And surgeons who have just performed life-saving surgery, the ability to go back and continue their work, saving more lives. When you get a smile from someone really suffering, then that's all the payment I need. But to watch all the volunteers get that same joy they've given, that's special. It might be a complementary therapy.
I did tell you I was a bit of a hippie. Hi, I'm Eva and I'm 89 years old and I've been here for a very long time. I originally first came to the Royal Free when my husband was ill in the early 80s. He had such wonderful care that I decided to give something back. In the 80s, it was the Friends of the Royal Free, and I've seen lots of change during the 30 plus years I've been involved. But what hasn't changed are the incredible volunteers. They have made the hospital what it is, a special and diverse place. I think at some point I've had every job, from chairman of the events and fundraising committee to the current librarian. I even did a stint in the X-ray department. Nothing stayed the same, and that's what the charity has done, changed, and I've changed with it. I've had an interesting life and the Royal Free has been a massive part of it. I've made so many friends and it's been so rewarding, but don't worry, I'm not going anywhere yet.
Hi, I'm Margaret and welcome to my second home, the Royal Free. Having been a patient here myself and my mum passed away at the Royal Free in Feb, this place means a lot to me. That might sound sad, but it's not. I've been a volunteer here since I retired a year ago and I love it. Volunteering is my way of saying thank you to such a great hospital where I and my family have received such wonderful care. I take whatever they throw at me. Everything from manning the shop trolley, helping serve lunches and admin work. It might just be stuffing envelopes, but it's important and keeps me busy and gives me the chance to say thank you and help other people like I was helped. The Royal Free is such a precious place to me with so many memories, and I love giving something back. But actually, I get as much from volunteering as I put in.
But don't tell them.
Hi, I'm Junko, and this is my beautiful dog Susie. Susie didn't have the greatest start in life, but 6 years ago we met at Battersea Dogs Home and it was love at first sight. She's got such a lovely temperament that a friend of mine suggested that she would make a great therapy dog. So we found out about the Royal Free and here we are. It really is such a rewarding thing to do. When you walk into a ward and you see a patient's eye light up, you realize how easy it is to make a difference to someone's life at the time when they need it. Suji is such a star. The staff and the patients really love her and she loves the attention. But I'm the real winner because I get that warm feeling that I made it happen. We are a team, Suji and I, and we'll keep coming back as long as they will have us. It's not volunteering, it's just a special dog walk.
Hi, I'm Desiree and welcome to the Young Volunteers programme at the Royal Free. I'm the manager and have been since 2015. It's been a huge learning curve with many challenges. With over 100 young volunteers at any time, it's a large proportion of all the volunteers. I think our success here with young volunteers is that it's not based on monetary results, but with a large group of diverse and enthusiastic local young people wanting to gain experience and do good. The volunteer journey here really is incomparable with the many roles these young people fill and help to make the hospital the vibrant place it is. When I see young people arrive who are maybe lacking in experience, but then you watch them grow into confident adults leading patients with humour and humility, that is a special thing to see. And then the more confident young volunteers, humbled by what they have learned from their experience. I really believe in what I do and what my volunteers contribute. I know that when they leave us, they're more rounded individuals who have learned something that you just can't buy, but also enjoyed themselves doing so much good for patients and the people in their local community.
Hello, I'm Jill. I'm the volunteer manager at the Royal Free Charity in Hampstead. I started here so many years ago, I'm not going to tell you. When I started, it was the Friends of the Royal Free, and it was a very small charity with only a small amount of committed volunteers. When I think of how the charity has changed in size and scope over the years, I feel such a sense of pride to be part of something that does so much good. Over the years, I must have interviewed and placed thousands of volunteers, and that's what's been so special for me. The diversity of the volunteers has been what made the charity and the job so incredible. Every age and nearly every country has at some time or another walked through that door, all wanting to contribute to this wonderful hospital and the community in which it resides. The end result is that we have helped so many people into work and further education and given many a task later in life. But most of all, they've all helped to keep patients happy and a great hospital running smoothly. I know I've been only a small part of that success, but I'm so proud of all those wonderful people. Now I'm just waiting to volunteer myself.
Okay, 5, 2, 3, and I know when I need it, I can count on you. Like 4, 3, 2, and you'll be there. 'Cause that's what friends are supposed to do, oh yeah. You can count on me, 'cause I can count on you.
So to conclude, and very briefly, Paul's going to talk to us about being a dementia companion.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Paul Reynolds. I'm one of the dementia companions. This is a program that's been going for about 4 or 5 years. There are about a dozen of us on the wards, and I'll describe what we do briefly. But first of all, a lot of people ask me why I do this. I think volunteers have two basic motives. One, a personal motive, and the other, a practical motive. In my case, I was interested in Alzheimer's disease and other forms of dementia because my younger brother had it for 10 years and died from it last year. So I got very used to dealing with people living with dementia. And having visited the hospital, I saw a sign outside the volunteers' office one day asking if people could volunteer to talk to patients with dementia. And I thought this is something I could do, and this is what I've been doing for about 2 years. So there's a personal motive there. There's also a practical motive for most people. I'm retired, and I live nearby. I do a morning a week, and that's not exactly arduous, so it can be done. So what do we do as dementia companions? Well, I work on Ward 8 West. There are several wards which are for the elderly, which these days is really over 80. If you're not over 80, you're not elderly. And these wards, 8 West has 36 beds, mostly in bays of 4. And I would say at any one stage, there are about 1/3 of the patients in there with dementia. Now, they don't come here to be treated for dementia. They're usually almost always for some medical reason. They've had a fall, they've got cancer, they've got some other illness. But they also have dementia, which the staff learn about from relatives, and the patients are often tested as well when they come in. A very simple test will very quickly establish whether somebody has dementia or not. The interesting thing about this hospital, as we all know, is that we're in northwest London, and the thing that really strikes me, meeting all the patients on the ward, is like a geological strata. You can see the waves of immigration into this city going back to the 1930s, because these people have now lived their lives, coming towards the end of their lives, but often they've come from somewhere else. You go back, for example, to the 1930s, and we still get refugees from Nazi Germany coming into this hospital. I've had 2 recently. One sadly died the other day, but he'd come over on a kinder transport in 1939, had a very successful life here. you wouldn't know he had dementia until he told me where he lived, which I thought was rather strange. It was in South London. I realized he was talking about where he used to live. And I did something which I now do more and more with patients, which I got Google Maps out and showed him the street view of his old house, which that really brought the memory back for him. There was another lady who'd been in Germany on Kristallnacht in November 1938. She had rushed back home as a little girl, and the Nazi thugs had pulled, she said, 2 pulled water pipes, which were flooding water into the central staircase of her block of flats. So you get these kind of memories, and that really is what I try and do. I used to be a BBC reporter, so I'm very used to going into a situation whereby perhaps you're got to interview some refugees, you've got to get a story, you've got to get it fast, you've got to get it right. So tapping into people's memories is something I've been able to do in my working life. And this is the same with people with dementia. It is a fact, as we all know, that dementia, particularly Alzheimer's, attacks the short-term memory and the cognitive skills first, but leaves the long-term memory intact until last. It's simply the way the deterioration of the brain works its way round the brain. So I have a habit of trying to get back into that old memory where people are more comfortable. I normally start with a few general questions to try to assess where we are with the patient. So something like, how long have you been here? Well, if they don't know how long they've been there, there's quite a good clue that they're not sort of fully aware of their surroundings. Sometimes they're not aware of their surroundings at all. And you have to follow what Maureen Reagan said of her father, President Reagan, who went on to develop Alzheimer's. You have to go where they are. That is the number one rule of dealing with people with dementia. You do not try to persuade them out of any fantasy they might have. I was talking to a lady the other day who thought she was in a hotel in Bournemouth. And we were talking about what she was going to do with her father. Obviously something they did as a child. There was another guy, he thought he was in Barbados. I didn't say, well, look out of the window, mate, and you'll realize you're not. You just go along with this, and they're much more happy. Other immigrants into this country came after the war. The Irish, very strong around Kilburn, of course. I've had some wonderful conversations with elderly Irish ladies who perhaps are widows now. They came after the war in the 40s and 50s. Some of them had quite hard lives, but they can go back to those villages in rural Ireland often where they had 8 to 10 brothers and sisters, there was no work, and they had to come to this country. And their faces just light up when you take them back to those memories, and you can get them to a place of happiness away from the distress of the ward and the situation they often find themselves in. More recently, we've had people from the subcontinent, from India and Pakistan, from the West Indies. So because of my job, and I used to travel around the world a lot, I can often surprise them by saying, well, I've been there, I know your country, and we can share memories of that. So going back to old memories is really what I aim to do. It's not always possible, but we have had some wonderful conversations, and the dozen or so dementia companions do get an awful lot back from this. We get some very rewarding conversations. You also get what I call the old Londoners, the old bus drivers and workers, and they give you an idea of how London used to be, lots full of manufacturing industries, and they'll say to you, oh, do you know the clockworks in Cricklewood, that kind of thing. And there was a bus driver the other day who was telling me that he was driving a bus up Cricklewood, and he stopped at the traffic lights, and suddenly there was a tremendous bang. Car behind him hit the bus, ended up on the platform of the old route master at the back. And there was a policeman across the road and came by and said to the driver, what the hell are you doing? And the bus driver said, well, the man replied, I didn't see him. So the bus driver said, what do you mean you didn't see me? I'm a bus. How much bigger do you want me to be? So what had happened was the bus guy, Bob, his name was, told me that he'd noticed some girls in miniskirts walking up the pavement. and he had noticed them. He looked across them. He reckoned the driver behind had looked too long. But that to me was a glimpse into that world of the 60s, which people of my age well remember the miniskirt coming in. And here was a little example of the kind of little memory you can pick up from these patients. But as I say, it's not always possible. There was one lady who, she was lying in the bed crying, "Help, help, help." And of course, she'd done it so much that really the nurses didn't have time to go to her. So I thought, well, I'll go and try and see what I can do. So I went over to her and said, "Hello, it's Mrs. So-and-so," because you can get their names from the ward office. And she looked at me and she said, "Go away." So I thought, well, that's not getting very far. But then there was a lovely Italian lady in the bed next door. I call her Anna. She became quite well known on the ward because she took an interest in all the other patients, not just in her bay, but her domain stretched into the neighbouring bays. And she was very mobile. She would walk around and talk to them all. So she knew all their stories and who was visiting them. And she said to me, "She's got a toy dog. Talk to him." So I thought this was a good way in to talk to the lady who was crying help. Because once I started talking to the toy dog, she realized she couldn't just go on saying help or tell me to go away. She had to act for the dog. So I had quite a good conversation with the dog. And however, as I walked away from the bed, I could hear the old cry coming back, "Help, help, help." So some of these contacts don't last very long, but we do reckon that, you know, we don't do any harm, and we do some good, I think, in occupying them and taking some of the pressure off the staff. And I also like talking frankly to some of the people who don't have dementia. You see them lying back in bed, you catch their eye. It's very difficult to avoid having a conversation with them. So that is the kind of thing we do. It's very rewarding, I have to say, and I think it does. I generally just tell the patients we're here just to pass the time of day, and that's what a lot of being in hospital is. People get very, very bored. They're worried underneath, of course, and if we can take away some of that worry, and if you can show also to the relatives who come in that their loved one is not being ignored on the ward, that is its own reward. I got the other day a lady, her husband turned out to be quite a famous painter, and in Hampstead you meet quite a lot of quite interesting people, and she invited me home to see these paintings. So her two daughters turned up, and they were so grateful to know that their mother was being talked to, that they also invited me back. I haven't yet taken up the invitation. Anyway, that gives you some idea of what we're doing, and as I say, there are not enough of us, and if anybody's interested, Jill will be very pleased to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul, for such a powerful insight. Thank you for sharing that with us. Very, very grateful. So without further ado, to conclude, Jenny.
So, as you've heard, the Royal Free, Barnet and Chase Farm charities have nearly 600 volunteers, many different ages, providing a wide variety of support for our patients. So you might be thinking, what next? What more can we do? So we're actually aiming quite high. We've got quite big plans. We want to build on the wonderful support that our volunteers are already providing. We're actually hoping, as Richard mentioned, we've got a 5-year charity strategy, and we're actually hoping that over the next 5 years we'll have volunteers supporting patients, visitors and staff in every ward and clinic in our hospitals. By working really closely with the staff and patients, we'll create new volunteer roles where they're needed most. For example, as we've heard already quite a lot about a really good programme called Dementia Companions, and that's how that project came about. It was talking to clinicians about the kind of support that we could provide with volunteer help. So as well as continuing to expand our current support, we'd really like to offer more help for people on leaving hospital. So this is a new area that we're looking to work in. We know that each week we have around 400 patients who are discharged from the trust, so across the many services that we run here. And many of them may live alone, they may be socially isolated, and they may be living with long-term conditions. So they are actually at risk of being readmitted for reasons that with a little intervention could actually be avoided. So we're hoping to set up our three services. So the discharge services, home visits, and also opening up an advice centre. So imagine that you are leaving hospital, but you don't have any family or friends for you waiting at home. How much better equipped would you feel if you had a volunteer who could accompany you home, help you get settled by turning the heating on, making sure that you've got food in the fridge, and also making sure that you've picked up the right medication? So, and together with this, within 48 hours after leaving hospital, the same or another friendly volunteer will give you a call to see how you're getting on, how you're settled in. They can raise any issues to the relevant departments to follow up. So it could be something like you're feeling a little bit confused about whether you've got the right dosages, or possibly we could ask a volunteer to make a home visit in order to give the patient some company or general support. We believe that this will make a huge difference to people's lives on leaving hospital and will go some way in helping to prevent unnecessary readmissions. So that's all from us tonight. I just want to say thank you for listening. It's obviously going to be a really busy future, we hope, with lots of volunteers. And we always need lots of volunteers. So please, if you are interested in getting involved in these new services or any of our other roles, please do. We have Sharon somewhere. Sharon, lovely volunteer coordinator. So do speak to Sharon or another member of the team and sign up. So hopefully we'll see some of you in the future. Thank you.